Well, hello and welcome to the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint live series. My name is Guy Stevens. I'm the executive director of the Alliance Against Seclusion and Restraint, and I will also be the host for the podcast today. And it is August. I don't know how it already became August, but summer is quickly traveling by. Those of you that may be familiar with who I am and what the Alliance is, great. But if you're not, I'll tell you a little bit more about what the Alliance is. The Alliance is an organization started a little over 5 years ago. Our focus began around the use of restraint and seclusion in schools around the country, but really kind of grew over time as we looked more and more not only at restraint and seclusion, but many of the things that are often being done to kids very often in the name of behavior: restraint, seclusion, suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment. Many of the approaches that are being taken around children who are having a difficult time, and things that simply aren't working and aren't helping kids that really need our help the most. So the Alliance was formed to try to make a difference. We do a lot of work around trying to get better laws and policies in place, do a lot of work around education as well, and of course, supporting individuals that are part of the community, part of people that are here to bring about some change. Really excited today. I always say that, and I'm always really excited because it's one of the things that I do that I enjoy probably more than anything else, having the opportunity to do the podcast. But I'm excited today because we have two amazing guests with us today, people that I am proud to call friends and colleagues and are out there doing amazing work. We've got Ginger Healy with us and Julie Beem, both with the Attachment Trauma Network, and we're going to be bringing them up and talking to them in a few minutes here and talking about some work that they've been doing recently, again, leading to positive change and better outcomes. Before I get into that, I do want to thank a couple of our sponsors that we have sponsoring our podcast that help us to make this possible. Going to begin by talking a little bit about two sponsors that have worked together to create a book. And this is a book written by Robert and Ryan Delana, a father and son. The book is called Without Restraint. Without Restraint is a book that talks really about a family's experience with a son who was being restrained and isolated, a family's experience of kind of trying to go through a system where the system was not working well for them, and all the challenges that they ran into and all of the difficulties. And many of us can relate to this. But the story really takes a turn when Robert takes his son skiing, discovers that his son has a love of skiing, a passion for it, and suddenly he begins to see his son differently, sees his son in a different way. And it's a fantastic story because I think many of us have faced some of these challenges and sometimes really feel overwhelmed by this. But the story here kind of goes into a place where we see Ryan, having a lot of success and doing well. So great book, highly recommended. And Ryan and Robert are also sponsors for the podcast, so I'd encourage you to check out their book. It's a fantastic book. Also want to mention one of our other sponsors, which is Supportable Solutions. Supportable Solutions has actually been a sponsor this entire year for our podcast, and Supportable Solutions is a educational consulting company. Also developed something called the Y Toolkit, and I'm going to share with you a short ad here about the Y Toolkit.
Behaviors are signals to the deeper whys. The Y Toolkit, a tool built for and approved by teachers, parents, and administrators that can both assess and support individuals struggling with behaviors. Connie has created a document that turns typical behavioral documents upside down and replaces them with a deep dive into what really matters: how to support each child within a compassionate and relational framework based on their individual differences. The Y Toolkit was found to decrease seclusion and restraint by 21% in a year-long pilot study.
The Y Toolkit is a really great approach and very different from your traditional functional behavioral assessments, and really tries to get to the deeper why of why a child's having a difficult time. And it's informed by all of the work of great people like Mona Delahooke and Lori Desitels and so many others. And want to thank Supportable Solutions and Connie, who is a friend and collaborator, for their support for our podcast. So with that, it is now time to get to our main event. And before I do, I just want to say real quickly, if you are watching us live, and I know there's a few people that are on live already, if you're watching us live, in the chat. Let us know who you are and where you're from. And it's always great to see who's joining us. So with that, let me go ahead and bring our guest up on the stage with me. Really excited to have Ginger and Julie here with me today. And for those of you that may not know Julie and Ginger, and if you don't, you should, let me tell you a little bit about them. Ginger Healy started her career as a child abuse investigator, hospital social worker, and school therapist. And of course, social worker explains a lot, because I always say that social workers are some of my favorite people. So that explains a lot. Spent 15 years as the social service supervisor at an international adoption agency where she learned about developmental trauma and attachment needs in children. She is currently a clinical social worker and the director of programs at the Attachment Trauma Network, which is a fantastic organization. And Julie and Ginger are both from ATN. She co-anchors the podcast Regulated and Relational with Julie Beem, the executive director of ATN, and Ginger speaks and teaches across the nation on trauma-informed schools and therapeutic parenting. Ginger is the author of Regulation and Co-Regulation, Accessible Neuroscience that Brings Calm into the Classroom. And I should have my copy sitting here. I usually do. I cleaned up my desk, so I don't have a copy to hold up here. You probably do. But anyway, a fantastic book. And what's really exciting about that book has been seeing you traveling around the country with that book is something that is being introduced in the classrooms. Fantastic book. It really takes the neuroscience of behavior, makes it accessible. She's also the author of an accompanying workbook that aims to reach beyond the classrooms for caregivers and child-serving professionals. And a third book, her third book, Managing Big Emotions, Identifying Triggers, Developing Coping Strategies, and Communicating Effectively, is releasing in October 2024. Is that still on target for that?
Yeah.
You're churning some things out here. Obviously not sleeping much. And let me introduce Julie Beem as well, who has been the executive director of the Attachment Trauma Network since 2009 and an active member and volunteer since 2005. Julie lives in the Atlanta area and is a mom of 4 and a grandmother of 3. Her youngest daughter adopted internationally over 25 years.
Bio. I have 4 grandbabies, but
4 grandberries. Okay. All right. And your oldest daughter adopted internationally over 25 years ago was the reason that she found support and education from other parents at ATN. Under your leadership, ATN has grown to reach families, schools, and communities around the world. In 2016, was given an Angel in Adoption Award to honor the organization's contributions to adoptive families across the U.S. And in 2014, the Creating Trauma-Sensitive Schools program was created. Julie is a frequent speaker at adoption and foster parenting conferences and education events focused on early childhood and trauma. Has an educational background, including a BS in secondary education and an MBA, and an emphasis on professional services marketing. Your true passion is about making life easier for children impacted by trauma and the families who love them. Paying it forward has become a cornerstone of Julie's work through ATN. And when not immersed in the daily task of a growing nonprofit, and I understand what that's like, or for my case, a very, very small nonprofit, Julie enjoys traveling with her husband, watching her daughter and swimming and dressage competitions, and playing with grandbabies. 4 of them. 4 grandbabies.
One of them is a baby. He turned 9 months last weekend. So.
Wow. And that's really exciting. And of course, you know, the thing that's always the most important about both of your bios that wasn't written in there and really should be is friends. You are friends and colleagues and people out there doing amazing work. And, you know, as the Alliance was getting started, finding organizations like ATN and the, you know, ability to collaborate with people that have been doing this longer than you had and knew far more than I knew at the time I was trying to start this little organization has always meant a lot to me, but very supportive of all the people out there in the community that are really trying to influence a change. So Julie and Ginger, welcome. We're excited to have you both here as always. It's always a pleasure to get together with you.
Thanks for having us, Guy. And yeah, you're not that little of a nonprofit. You're doing remarkably well.
Well, so. I appreciate that. But it's not easy, and I can relate to the struggle. We could probably have another support group around that. But it's tough for sure. But really excited to have you both here. And again, if you're watching live, let us know in the chat who you are and where you're from. I see Julianne has already jumped in, an occupational therapist from Colorado. Awesome. So occupational therapist.
Love
That's right.
occupational
They're on my
therapists.
list with the
Oh,
social workers, and
yes.
Yes.
that's right. That's right. So great to have you here. And I should mention that a week ago you weren't scheduled to be here, and
Yeah.
I put out a bat signal and said, "Hey, we had a cancellation," and I we never cancel our live events, and very quickly Julie Ginger started putting you guys on the hook for it and was like, "Hey, we can probably do that," and I appreciate your willingness to do that.
Flexibility is our
That's
middle
right.
name. Hey,
That's
Joe.
right. That's right.
There's Joe.
And our friend Joe Brummer, who is joining us from Connecticut. And many of you who are watching probably know Joe. We're going to be doing a book study for his book, actually a book study for educators for his book coming up here in a month or so.
It is a mind-blowing book. Mind-blowing.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think I probably injured my neck from all the head nodding that I was doing as I was reading. Kind of, Joe was kind enough to send an early draft along, and I read it and listened to it. I actually had a Speechify, and I was using it to listen to the book as well. And I'd find myself just like, So great stuff. But anyway, when you agreed, part of the reason I wanted to have you on was to talk about some of the things that have been happening at ATN. And maybe before we get into that, because I always like to kind of not make the assumption that everybody knows who ATN is and what you do. I know a lot of the people that we both know and love know you well, and but of course, there are people probably still that are learning about you. So, Julie, I wonder if you might, before we get into kind of what's new at ATN, talk a little bit about what ATN is and what you do, and why people might want to learn more about you and support the work you're doing.
Of course, thank you. ATN is not new. We will actually be celebrating our 30th anniversary next year. 30. So we've got some plans for that too, because it's a big milestone. But ATN was founded initially to support families of children who'd been impacted by attachment disorders, and what we didn't know then but now know were trauma-based disorders and problems. And so primarily we served early on adoptive and foster families, grandparents, kinship, that children who'd been removed from their original families, the other families being puzzled by their behaviors and the struggles and the challenges that they had. And that was how I found ATN, was in those early years when we brought home our daughter from China and were struggling with figuring out what to do. And the professionals around us were struggling too, because we all didn't know what we now know about early childhood trauma. So ATN has been through that entire growth of that. We started learning about trauma before the neuroscience came along and really taught us now what we all know so well. So in the early days, that was where we were, very grassroots, very on the phone with each other all the time, eventually using dial-up and all of those fun tools that we used to have, listservs that we used to have to communicate with each other. And then about 10 years ago, several of our members across the country who were educators, started talking about, gosh, if the teachers could know this, if the schools could understand this information, we're using some of these strategies and some of these ideas in our classrooms, and it's making a difference. And so, and they started to push rather forcefully and loudly on, we have to do something. And from that, was born our Creating Trauma Sensitive Schools program, that at first was a series of summits and interviews, and we were kind of testing the water and figuring out who knew what. And then we just jumped in and started having an annual conference, which this is going to be our 8th year, coming in February. So it obviously is something that's needed out there, and was really interesting for me as a parent whose child had struggled at school, to be able to then meet educators who were invested in helping these struggling kids and help and looking for answers and ways to approach this problem and what trauma does to impact learning. And so that's, it was sort of a full circle moment when all of that started happening for me, because it was like, it wasn't a them against us mentality. The professionals aren't against the parents. It was very much this, what can we all do? And here's the brain science that, that teaches us that this is really a thing, and we can all do things to impact how children's brains learn and develop. So,
So of course the annual conference is a big part of what you do, and you mentioned you've got one coming up again next year. I think I've been to the last three, and always been a fantastic experience. And of course, you bring educators from all across, not only the United States, but I'm trying to think. I know when I've been there in the past, like people from areas of like Alaska that you needed to get on smaller and smaller planes to reach by, people that have joined from kind of all over. Tell us a little bit more, if you would, about that annual conference that you do, and kind of the things that people might expect to learn if they go to that, because we have an audience here, as you probably know. We have a lot of parents, a lot of caregivers, but we have a lot of educators, a lot of administrators, and one of the things that I think is always helpful is, like if you're a parent watching this, learn about the conference, and we'll put a link in. In fact, there it is. Look at that. Courtney's already a step ahead of me. Put a link in, and yeah, that's right. That's right. And encourage like parents, like, this is something you can share with your schools. And if you're an educator, this is something to share with your administrators. So tell us a little bit more about that conference, because I know it really is a kind of a signature event for ATN. Is this really, I think, what can be a life-changing kind of event?
Sure. It's in Atlanta this year. We actually do it. It's a hybrid event, but it's asynchronous. So really what that means is that we do the first half of the week in person and the second half of the week virtually. And it's kind of like two conferences in one. We started that during COVID, and it just has really served our audience well, because some folks can't get on a plane and come to Atlanta, although I hope a lot of the folks listening do, because the in-person is really special in terms of being around about 1,000 plus other like-minded folks and talking about how they're implementing in their schools and their community organizations and in their programs the trauma-informed strategies that are there. And so we're excited because I'm excited because we're back in Atlanta, which is where I live, and that was also
that's convenient, right?
Yeah, it was convenient. It was also our largest conference in 2020. We right before COVID, we had a conference in February. And they're always in February over the President's Day week, because that sometimes helps for educators to be able to use that time off, and schools can send more educators, because we know that even, especially since COVID, finding subs, getting folks to step in for other folks has really become tough. So it's February 16th through 18th in Atlanta, and then the 20th and 21st online. And the online conference is then available for the next 30 days. So you can listen to the recordings. It's not quite the same as being live and getting to ask questions online, but it's, the content is so good that you'll want to soak it all in.
And I just happen to notice that somebody familiar left a comment here and said, "Hi from Massachusetts. I work with Julie and Ginger," and that may be an understatement, right?
I was just gonna say
Stephanie probably appreciates how difficult it is to run two events at the same time.
She works, right? And we come on podcasts like this.
That's great. That's great. So, why don't you, Ginger, if you would, I know you have announced some keynote speakers for this, correct?
We have the
why don't you tell me a little bit?
Most amazing speakers. So for our virtual, well, let me start with the in-person. Dr. Anashay Wright, and she is from that Georgia, Atlanta area. She's going to kick off our keynote. And then we have Jen McNally. I don't know if you know Jen, but she has been to our conferences before. She is fun and funny and really gets it about, wellness and self-care, and does it in such a engaging way. So she'll be there. Dr. Lori DeSatos will be there again. And then at our, why am I losing my words? Our virtual conference, we will have Dr. Kristen Neff, who is like expert in self-compassion. and Dr. Dan Siegel, two
Wow.
big names who you just don't want to miss. Dr. Neff, she just was the consulting neuroscientist for the new movie Inside Out 2. So we can't wait to talk to her about that and all things self-compassion. And then, of course, Dr. Siegel. There will be so much there for him to talk about. This is, his wheelhouse, and like, we're his audience. We just can't get enough of everything that he and Dr. Tina Payne Bryson put out. So it is going to be phenomenal. And then we always have cream of the crop speakers, as you know, Guy. Everybody that comes and speak is truly the best of the best. So there will be something for everybody there.
Yeah, and you usually do some fun activities, and I know you've got a usually big hall for sponsors that are there that are sharing kind of the work that they do, and lots of amazing people. And of course, you mentioned the dates before, and I just pulled the website up here, and I'm sharing that. So the 8th annual conference, we've got an academy. What's Academy Day? I know what it is. But why don't you tell other people what it is?
It's the Sunday before, and it's an opportunity to do a deeper dive in some topic areas. Things like restorative practices. I've been looking at proposals, so I'm going to throw out things like mindfulness probably this year. Maybe something from Dr. Lori. We haven't got them all selected yet, but they are 3-hour. So you can do 2 of them, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. A lot of times they're experiential. Where we're, people are getting up and moving around, and it's a good way for, we usually have 1 or 2 sessions that are really for newbies, so that you can sort of become immersed in the basics. And then we have others that are deeper dives for folks that have been year after year or have a background in trauma-informed schools, and they want to go deeper on those topics. And it gives you an opportunity, because once the conference itself starts, and we're doing the gazillion workshops that we have, which is right around 60, I believe, on the in-person side, they're going fast. And people are just, people are like, the day just goes so fast, and I didn't learn everything I wanted to, but my brain is full and I'm tired. And so.
I think it's really important that you do that you have kind of some of that, introductory kind of material, because it's easy if you've gone year after year to a conference like, oh, well, we've done that before. We shouldn't, I know from going to the conference in the past, I mean, there are people that are in very different places in their journey. Some that are just getting started off, just dipping their toes into kind of this area of trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive practices. And then, of course, there are people that have been doing this for a long time. But I think it's always important to make sure that we're inclusive of that, because it's easy to kind of leave people behind and then have something that's not going to help people get up. So, of course, the 16th is the Academy Day. The 17th and 18th is in person in Atlanta. And the 20th and the 21st is the virtual conference. Of course, the 19th is a day for people to relocate, all the hardworking people that go into making this happen, for them to be able to shift gears and get it all ready. And of course, the pricing information is registration open yet, or when?
Registration is not open, but it will be open by September 1st at the latest. And we have the packages. Things are bundled. So if you want to come to both, or if you want to just come to Academy Day and in person, there's group pricing for groups of 10 or more. And we do take purchase orders, because that's usually what a school will ask. So schools find all kinds of creative ways to fund a group of folks, and that's wonderful. We're willing to help in any way we can on that. And
you offer the CEUs as well for
we do.
Okay.
We do.
Okay. Yes. And again, I mean, this is an event really for not only educators and administrators, but also for parents and caregivers and others that are supporting kids. That's great.
Yeah, if you come, you will learn some things. And I have to tell you that I met Dr. Wright, Anna Shea, who's our opening keynote, when we did a site visit downtown at the beginning of July, and she's got so much energy. She's bringing an inclusion DEI perspective to trauma informed and talking about, how to make sure nobody falls behind. And it's just, she's passionate about the work. She's done so much good work in this, in the Atlanta area. We're excited to have her come. And she refers to herself as a disruptor of systems. And I immediately said, well, she's going to fit right in. Right?
I think I might have a disruptor shirt on today.
Let's wear mine.
Somewhere underneath there. There we go.
There you go.
There we go.
I told her, I said,
I didn't get kicked off the plane for it either. So,
Yeah.
The kindred spirit ship. Yeah, I told her, I said, wait till you meet the disruptors. I know.
Yeah. That's great. So great event. We definitely want to encourage people to check that out and learn more about it. And I want to talk about some other exciting things that you have going on and some work that you've been doing recently. But before I do, Ginger, I want to talk to you a little bit about kind of like your entryway into ATN and the kind of things that you do as part of your work there at ATN.
Yeah, I come to ATN as an adoptive mom. I adopted my son when he was 5 years old and didn't know what I didn't know. And so I needed support and resources and other people to tell me, you're not alone, you're not crazy, you're going to survive this. And here's where to go from here. And so found Julie and Lorraine, and Stephanie. We're all adoptive parents and really, becoming experts in attachment because we had to, so that was how I came to it. I have been a social worker for many years, but boy, this was different. This was something that I really needed help and support with. And so that's where I found my safe base, right? Of people that I could be honest and open and wave the white flag. So that was such a joy for me to find like-minded, like-hearted people that really got me and understood me. I was feeling so alone. So, and that was many years ago. And then I started out as the parent program director, and then now I'm helping with all programs. So, we have that parent caregiver side of ATN where we're supporting those caregivers, just like Julie mentioned. That's how ATN started. That's how ATN will always, be that support and resource and offering, referrals. And we've got, our podcast is equally parent therapeutic parenting. And then we've got the school program as well, where we talk about and talk with educators and creating trauma sensitive school environments. So the parent caregiver side, and then also the trauma sensitive school side program with our conference that we've just talked about. And, our certification program that is for everybody, not just caregivers, not just educators, but anybody that wants to learn more and have that foundational. I know I jumped ahead to that certification program. I know we'll talk about it, but it is a foundational part of ATN too, to educate. And that is how we support, is ongoing education and being that megaphone for what is the latest and the most important neuroscience that will help heal. So we can shout that through the certification program, through our podcast, through our conference, and all the programs that we do that I have the honor of helping out with. So
sure. And of course, in addition to that, maybe not kind of formally as part of your ATN, but you're an author and you've written a couple of these books now that are really, I think, getting a lot of really positive attention. And that certainly was probably informed by your journey as well, I would assume. And
oh, yes.
Yeah. It probably has become a big part of, kind of what you're doing. But what a great thing as well, kind of for the organization. It's like, Julie, you get to add more credentials to all your staff. And like, hey, we've got this famous author here that's part of our.
If anyone who knows anything will quickly figures out that Julie was and is and always will be the greatest mentor ever. And so everything that I say and do, she taught me, so I give a lot of credit to her in the book, because that's exactly, where I learned most everything that I know. And so I am forever grateful for that. And ATN, okay, I'm super biased, but I come by it honestly, because ATN really knows, we know our stuff. We have that experience. We have that education. We have that knowledge. I mean, Julie more than anyone. And so that's why I feel so passionate and able to just shout from the rooftops how good the certification program is, and how quality our podcast is, and how proud I am of the book, because all of that knowledge, it comes from ATN and the people who work there and promote it and are a part of it. So that's where the credit goes, and rightly so, because we really do know our stuff, and I'm so proud of that and honored to work at ATN.
Well, now I kind of want Julie to adopt me. I need
you. That is such a wise wish.
Well, it's not just me. It is the culture. I mean, and obviously, because I've been involved with ATN, the culture is one that I feel strongly about, right? Yeah. But it's a culture of us working together and learning together, and we really do know our stuff. I mean, that's why we took on this certification, is that we were like, well, shouldn't somebody make one of these? And then we kind of looked around and said, maybe that somebody is us.
Yeah. So let's get right into the certification, because that was one of the big things I really wanted to talk about today. Is ATN recently has put out a trauma-informed certification, and I'm going to bring it up on the screen in a minute. But why don't you? And you've already kind of started to lay the foundation for this. That and of course, what I know about your work that is very similar to the work that we do is that at the end of the day, this work is really all about change, right? What can we do to help influence a positive change and bring something into the world that's going to make a difference? And of course, that's probably one of the big drivers behind this. So why don't you start off telling me a little bit about, what was behind this idea to develop a certification program, and then we can talk a little bit more about the program itself.
Sure. So with 30 years of history, what we started to realize was that while we weren't always aware of it, we were always influencing this field. Because back a long time ago, we were referred to as the Attachment Disorder Network. And then we decided, because trauma was coming to the forefront, to call ourselves Attachment and Trauma Network. And then people started talking about attachment trauma. And we're like, oh, that's interesting. The words weren't there before. We started talking about parenting needing to be more therapeutic. And before long, other people were talking about therapeutic parenting. So we're like, okay, we feel like we're just this little group over here, but we're having an influence and an impact on what's happening out there. And so we've become more cognizant of that in the last 10 years. And one of the things that we were getting was a huge amount of request of, can somebody train and then you just fill in the blank, Sunday school teachers, bus drivers, after school program people, my Boy Scout camp leaders, and we were getting requests from everywhere. Can somebody teach this to them? Like, where do we go for something that's fast and online and is accurate and thorough? And we're like, okay, we don't have the answer to that. But then it was like, but wait, if we're the people that are influencing this, shouldn't we be the ones? And shouldn't we influence what it means to be trauma informed, to be trauma sensitive, to be trauma responsive? Because if you go looking for those as definitions, they're kind of all over the board right now. And everybody kind of thinks they know. And, the only way, we decided we would plant some roots into what it means to be trauma informed, trauma sensitive, and trauma responsive. And that's kind of a gutsy move, right? Because now people can just shoot at that if they want to, but you got to start somewhere. And we've been around long enough that we're just like, okay, we're going to take a stab at what we believe this all means, and and see where that goes. So we really then started internally with a task force that was made up of board members and some other experts who had come on to the task force, started wrestling with those three terms and deciding what order they came in and how things were going to be defined. And we decided that trauma informed was level 1, was the first step, because trauma aware obviously would be the very first step, that I'm aware that there is trauma out there. I don't know anything about it, I don't know what to do about it, but I'm aware that trauma happens. But then beyond that, I have to become informed, and I have to know certain things. I have to know things about ACEs. I've got to know things about what it does to brains and nervous systems. I've got to have understanding of what helps resolve that toxic stress from the trauma, some real basics. And then the next step, and this is where a lot of other people's definitions get turned different directions, is the trauma sensitive, where I now know it and start to live it, start to what we all refer to as the paradigm shift of it, right? So that we're actually embodying the trauma-informed thought processes, and the way that we're viewing the world is, what can I do to help folks get regulated? Like Ginger's book, right? What does co-regulation really look like? Am I doing that? Am I thinking? Is that the way I'm approaching the world? And then, and only then, can we truly call ourselves trauma responsive, and that's and that's ultimately the goal, is that we want trauma responsive organizations and systems to be able to respond to everybody who's undergoing trauma or toxic stress, because almost everybody does.
Yeah.
So you saw a need in the world and had a realization that, hey, wait a second. I mean, we are experts here, and yeah. who better to put out something in this vein? And of course, I'll tell you, and I think you probably both know, and I think we probably all agree on this. At the end of the day, I want people to get information and knowledge wherever they can. And I'm sure there's other great programs out there as well. But you certainly kind of come from this with a unique perspective, a long history of this work. And it certainly makes sense. Things always make sense after they are, right? Like before that, it's like, right. We should do this.
Okay, we should, are we really big and powerful and can do this? Well, I don't know that big and powerful is required. What's required is, nobody really knows the basics better than us.
Right. So you now have created this. I'm going to pull the website up here, but you have this trauma-informed certification, level 1. Can you, tell me a little bit more about, this course, and feel free, Ginger, Julie, whoever wants to start out here, but, tell me a little bit about the course, who's it for, and what might they expect? I'll just share, and because I told you, but you of course were gracious enough to provide some invitations to previous speakers to go and check out the training, and I've started going through. I think I'm around 40% right now, so I spent a little time kind of going through and had a great experience. But tell us a little bit more about the actual training itself and kind of who you think it's for.
Well, it is online, so you're going to take it virtually wherever you want to. It's convenient that way. And you can go at your own pace. You can, review, go back and forth, repeat it. So it's really user-friendly, convenient that way. And it really is for anyone. It is not, just for educators or just for a therapist or anything like that. It is for anyone and everyone that is interested in learning more about trauma, what it means to become trauma informed. So that covers the gamut of everybody in the school system, everybody that has kids, everybody that works with children. And I wouldn't even say that that's a requirement either, because we are all, as adults, now looking back and seeing where we need to do our work and heal too. So there's no one that would not benefit from this information. And the great news right now is that it is on sale for $99, which you cannot Absolutely cannot beat that.
Yep.
Price is unbelievable. It takes about 5 hours to complete if you were just to kind of keep going through it. But again, you can go at your own pace. And then when you are done and complete and have passed the test, it gives you a certificate of completion and a badge that you are now a certified trauma-informed, have received that trauma-informed certification level 1. So a lot of benefits to taking the course and to moving through it wherever you want, whenever you want, at your own pace. And it's such a great price.
Mm-hmm. And I see also I've got the website up, and of course it mentions enroll your group. So, you can have an entire school organization
for groups.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing, if you are someone who is well versed in this information and, you've been to our conference many times and you've read all the books and you have this information, we have a test out option. So you can still receive your certification and your badge, and if you're able to take the test and pass it without going through the course. So we have that option as well, which is really nice, because we do have a lot of people who are well informed and experts as well in the field, and we would love for them, and they would benefit from being certified with us as well.
Right.
I saw that option and I thought, well, what's the fun in that? Like, I need to
I
see
know.
I need to, I mean, let's face it. I mean, for much longer than I have, both of you have been, doing just a lot of amazing work in this area. And, I got involved kind of through the Alliance and learning a lot about trauma and neuroscience and all these things. But I find that I'm always learning, and I don't think it matters if it's something kind of more on the kind of entry level side or not. I'll go into a conference session sometimes and think, I know this topic pretty well, and you learn something. So I think it's always worth going through in the journey. And of course, I'm interested as well. We're working on some course development as well. So I was interested in kind of seeing how you organize it and how you laid it out. And of course, you had so tell me a little bit. You had some facilitators that were facilitating the training. Can you tell me a little bit about the level 1 facilitators? I thought it was interesting.
Did you like them?
No. I thought it was great to have kind of the perspectives that you brought into that. I think initially I thought I was going to see both of you kind of as the main people taking me through it, but you made a choice in terms of having people. So tell me a little bit about that, kind of the facilitators that you have helping with the training.
Well, we do. I mean, we are fortunate to have in our staff someone whose background has been adult education, and so she's done some online coursework. So when we said this is kind of the flow of, this is what we want to teach, this is kind of the flow of order of what we want to teach. Now, how are we going to do this? And because I thought Ginger and I were going to have to just record ourselves, in StreamYard doing slides. I didn't know what was going to happen.
I've been doing some of that recently.
And she said, no, let's do this, and let's use some avatars and let's see how it goes. And so I can proudly say that part of the fun, it was also part of the stress of giving birth to this certification program this summer, was that we went through 2 levels of testing. We alpha tested with our board and then came back and said, things weren't pretty enough. There was a lot of design changes, and even some changes in how the avatars acted and reacted. But then we beta tested with 85 individuals, and they were folks, many of them didn't know ATN very well. They were just acquaintances and friends and some business colleagues of our board, which is very diverse. And so we tested with folks from the healthcare industry. We tested, there were a couple of pediatricians that took the beta test. There were a lot of people from child welfare, a state PTA president. Like, it was just this wide swath of people. And they were all pretty excited about the wide swath of avatars, of narrators that we had. We have one from early childhood and one from child welfare social services, and then a high school principal. And so it was, it was fun to do that. And those individuals who helped voice and bring life to those folks helped us with the scripting of, what what they would say from those vantage points. And it was a fun way to put it together, albeit, we were missing deadlines, and our hair was on fire and all of those things, but it was still very much fun to do.
And you probably noticed, Guy, as you got into it, if you do like Julie and Ginger, you will see us.
You will see us. Yeah, we're there. We're there.
Yeah. I mean, I remember some like podcast excerpts and other things, and I remember at one point some conversations. It was like with some other folks as well.
Yeah, our focus groups. Those were really powerful. So
right. And even some familiar faces in those.
Yeah.
I saw groups. I'm like, hey, that's Rick. I know who he is. Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I've had a chance to. I'm about 40% through. I started going through it. Last week I was traveling. I was in Florida, and I was like, I'm going to try to go through this and check it out. And of course, I think it, like you said, the option to kind of be self-paced, and you've got these videos that kind of go through a lot of the content and kind of the knowledge checks and quizzes and all of that. I think it's a fantastic opportunity. So I'm excited about it. What are you the most excited about now that it's launched? Because I know getting a program like this from idea to execution to out the door, what are you the most excited about now that it's actually launched?
That's probably what I'm most excited, is that we survived. But seriously, our beta testers are like, so when's the next one coming? When's the next level coming? And that's really hard for us to say at this juncture, because becoming trauma sensitive, that shift in who you are, requires a whole different kind of learning and then feedback if we're going to certify that. So that's probably going to look different than this certification. It's probably not going to be 5 hours online. It's probably going to be some interaction in some way, because there needs to be, there needs to be more back from the person taking the certification than just going through tests. Not that that's super easy.
Sure.
It's a different level, and not everybody's going to want to, to go there. So at this point, what I think I appreciate the most about this trauma-informed certification is that our hope is it lays a foundational level and language across several different child serving industries, right? So that we're all talking about, what does it mean to co-regulation? What does that mean? Of course, we've heard of the ACEs study. Of course, we now know what the limbic system does. Just the basics that some of us are going, yeah, I already know that. But lots of people in the world that work with children don't. And so that's what we're hoping, is that it helps that.
That's great. Ginger, anything you want to add to that?
I was thinking about all these little things that the certification program has that enriches it too. Like, it's got this beautiful notes section that you can print off and follow along with and refer to. And it's got resources to go back to and utilize. If you want to dive deeper here, read this book that accompanies this lesson. So, really foundational, backed up stuff to dive deeper into. And then we all are also in the process of being certified to issue continuing education credits with it. So that will be a great thing that is hopefully just a couple days or weeks away from us getting into our hands, so that we can push that out too. So a lot of perks with it, and a lot of things that will just really benefit your job, your life. I've just heard, we think it's great, but then we're receiving such good feedback on it too, that validates that we're keeping going in this direction, that it's been much needed and it's about time. So we're so proud and we're just so happy to be able to offer it.
Yeah, I love that point you made about the impact that this can have. I mean, sometimes people do a program like this because they want to learn more to better support people that they're supporting or working with. Maybe they're an educator, and you begin kind of doing it for that direction. Like, oh, I'm aware of the impact of trauma. I want to, I want to learn more. And I had an email with a volunteer today who actually went through Dr. Lori's program, the Attachment Trauma Network's, excuse me, not Lori's program, Applied Educational Neuroscience. Get in mind. But went through Lori's program and written an article for us recently. And we were talking a little bit about the experience with the Applied Educational Neuroscience framework, kind of going in to learn, but then the impact that then has on your family and yourself. And I mean, that's how a program like this is. It's like, it's not just about learning so you can do better for people you serve or support or whatever it may be. As you begin to kind of, get this information, it changes the way you are, even with yourself and your family. And I think that's so meaningful. So anyway, I just, as you were saying that, it was kind of resonating with me, like this goes much deeper. And of course, if people want to do it, they can go to the website and there's a link here to buy now. You mentioned that it's on sale right now.
Yes.
And they can come, and it looks like normally $150, is that right? And on sale for $99.
Yeah.
Okay. And I would probably urge people to take advantage of that quickly. Do you know how long that sale is going to be in effect, or just
till the end of September? Actually, we're giving everybody a nice long time to do that, because we also have our speakers and our last year's attendees who are getting some perks for taking it too. So we're hoping we're now just over 100 folks registered, and we're hoping that climbs quickly in these first few months. And then after that, our group discounts will go into place. So if you have a group that you want to do that, and we'll also be able to offer CEs. So I know some folks have contacted us, and they're counselors or school psychologists or folks that need that as part of their credentialing. We'll get that out as fast as we can so that you can sign up too. So.
And because I know August is crazy for everybody, but you can purchase it now, and then you've got time to take it. You don't need to purchase it and start the day that you purchased it, but purchase it now to get that price.
Yes. There's a 90-day window from the date of purchase that it remains active. So, and if you do choose the test out option, if you're wondering about that, I think Guy is right to want to see the coursework and to take a stab at that. But even at the test out option, you get the coursework. So for example, if I test out and I get it, I pass the test, I still can access for the rest of my 90-day window, the curriculum, if I want to look at it. Or if I don't pass it, no problem. We just open that the whole thing up for you to take the unit test like the rest of us had to, and and take it that way. So it's if you're thinking you might want to test out, sure, but if you want to walk through, just do remember it is foundational, and that, Guy. I mean, we're covering the basics, and the only basic that maybe most people hasn't covered is one that we had to throw in there because we are the Attachment and Trauma Network. There is a whole section on attachment and attachment theory because we feel like that's crucial, and thankfully more people are coming around to believing that as well. So.
Well, I think that is such a crucial part. Obviously, as the Attachment and Trauma Network, we know that, we believe that. It's like with every fiber of our being, but not everyone gets that or appreciates that in other programs or in other learning. I think that's one piece that's missing, but it's everything. It's like, it's why we're here in the first place when we're talking about behavior as communication. Well, what happened in early attachment, and what are we doing to heal attachment? Because whatever was ruptured in attachment can be healed in relationship. Relationships are the foundation. And that's why, our podcast is called Regulated and Relational. I mean, if we boiled everything down to how we heal adversity in childhood, it's safe relationship. How do we learn to manage those emotions and feelings? And so this attachment piece, you're going to love. I think everybody who takes it are just going to, no matter what they already know, we've just given that information in such a digestible, accessible, way that it'll shift you. If it's not, there's something wrong there. This paradigm shift, if you haven't experienced it already, it will change your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I know we're reaching towards the end of our time, and I want to give anybody in the audience, if you're watching, if you have a question or comment before we close out here, feel free to put that in the chat. And you're absolutely right. I mean, this really does change it's kind of like once you see some of this, you can't unsee it. And it affects everything.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it makes everything easy.
No.
But it affects everything. And I think ultimately gets people moving in a far better direction. So this is really exciting.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of hope, I'm going to dream for a second, we were talking about how, it can be offered to schools or kind of groups and whatnot. Wow. I look forward to the day that we can see on ATN's website schools that have been certified in this. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great to, and to, again, encourage, as I mentioned to you before, we've got a lot of parents and caregivers, but we've also got a lot of educators and administrators and others. And, again, I encourage those that are watching, if you're a parent or a caregiver of a child, share this program with your school, whoever you're connected with, whether it's a teacher or administrator, share it. This is how change happens. We get people to kind of adopt programs and try things out. And, it really can make a big difference. So I do want to encourage people to do that. But as we reach the bottom of the hour here, and Ginger, I promise, because, when you were kind enough to agree to do this last minute, you're like, but I've got to be done by a certain time. And I said, okay, we'll get you out of here. So as we kind of wrap up here, we've talked about the conference, which is really exciting, talked about the new certification program. Anything else you want to share, or any words of wisdom that you would like to leave us with? And I'll start with you, Ginger, and then Julie. We'll take it home from there.
If you have not checked out our podcast yet, you really, truly are missing out. It's amazing. And we have amazing guests, and like I said before, that kind of half and half of therapeutic parenting nuggets and of trauma sensitivity and educational environment nuggets. And the crossover is powerful. You don't need to pick and choose, but whether you're on your way to carpool or on your walk or whatever you're doing, you are missing out if you have not checked out our podcast. It is, I know I'm biased, but it is gold. So Regulated and Relational on any podcast website or forum.
Fantastic. And maybe Courtney could throw a link up as well. I do want to pause before I get to you, Julie, and it's always fun. Usually at the beginning, when I say we have people from all over the world, I see Linda jump on and say hello from New Zealand. So Linda's doing fantastic work out in New Zealand, and always good to have Linda join us. Julie, let's go to you.
Words of wisdom.
Your words of wisdom.
Pressure. Oh my gosh.
Well, I mean, we know you. Ginger gave you such a the mentor and all that I am. So I mean, this has to be really profound.
The build up. So here I am with I don't know that I have words of wisdom, except Ginger and I and ATN runs on feedback, and we love to hear from folks, right? So whether you're listening to our podcast, whether you're taking the certification, you're coming to the conference, whether you just check out our website, which is deep in resources. If you're a parent struggling with a child impacted by trauma, the two of you are trying to figure out how to help the child and also how to help yourself, because you're going to get your own level of stress happening there. Dig around on the website and then reach out to us and say, I couldn't find this, or I need this, or what about this? And because we really do want to know what, and we've been around for 30 years, and we hope that we'll be around for another 30 years, but we also want to always be available for the folks that need us the most. So.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. And of course, we've got a big intersection here in terms of, kids that are kids that come from a trauma background that are more likely to be restrained, secluded, suspended, expelled, subjected to corporal punishment. And I often talk about this, kind of the kids that are misunderstood, and you can go down the list. It's not only trauma, but kids that are adopted. We can go down, and there's so much of a connection here. Listen, I promised to have you out of here at a certain time, and I'm going to make sure I live up to that promise and let you go. But I really appreciate you joining us here and telling us about what you've been working on. I'm going to ask you to hang around. We're going to let everybody else go here, but thank you both so much, and we will see you again very soon. So thank you,
Thanks,
Julie. Thank you for being here.
everybody.
Thanks.